Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Byte, where we leverage news to help you get ahead and stay ahead of tech. Every week, we cut through the noise to bring credible insights from around the world. Here we discuss the details to widen your perspective so you can make better decisions today. What was once cutting edge or science fiction, like space exploration, augmented reality, and robots, are no longer a distant dream, but a short walk down the block from today. You see, the future is not changing. It's already here, and it's driving you and each generation after us further into the new now. Let's get started.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing? Welcome back to episode 2. My name is Tanya. I am Keith's co-host and the principal strategist at the Grand Strategy. I am here to give you business and market perspective on some of the headlines that we have every week. Essentially, I'm here to talk to you about Ask a Strategist. What does a strategist think of what's going on?
Cool. And I'm Carlo Cisco. I'm the founder and CEO of Select. We're a digital membership and concierge service that connects people with exclusive events, savings, and perks at over 1 million different locations all across the world. So lots of top hotel brands, restaurants, retailers, sports teams, really pretty much everything you can imagine. We arrange exclusive partnerships so that our members get special benefits and treatment.
Thanks, Carlo. And as you guys all know, I'm Keith Andrade. I'm the CEO and founder of the Morning Byte. We leverage business and tech news to help you guys get ahead and stay ahead. So I know Tanya and Carlo, we both actually all met at a company called JustWorks, where I had my first sales job. And JustWorks was a disruptor in the industry. And it's actually where I kind of fell in love with tech, understanding that technology itself could be leveraged in different ways than most people might not see right away. So Carlo, you're kind of an early adopter, I would say, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, I think we were on the earlier side of that. I mean, look, JustWorks is great for like not having to worry about a lot of the crap that you have to deal with having employees. I don't think a lot of people realize that, and especially if you're going to have them across multiple states or multiple countries, it only gets more complicated. So it's huge to have like any of that lift off if you're a founder, because inevitably some piece of that's going to fall on you. So we love the platform. We're still on it.
That's awesome. We actually our guest for next week is actually an account executive from JustWorks. So for our listeners there, we'll get more into JustWorks another day. But I bring it up only because that's where Carlo and I met. So Carlo, you building Select, you use AI for your concierge service, right?
A bit, yeah. So we've used it behind the scenes since 2018, actually. As the company started to grow, I wanted to figure out a way to get the concierge team to be able to scale in volume and improve in quality at the same time. And the best way to do that was to develop an internal tool that would like help them as requests come through and give them sort of like information that would be, normally they would have to look around for or research. And now we're doing a lot more stuff. I mean, we've got like travel planning AIs that we'll be releasing. We've got like some public facing AIs, mostly for like prospective members to help answer their questions. But those are starting to get a little bit smarter, which is kind of cool to see. So yeah, we're very excited about it because of the opportunity to create value. It's definitely a massive thing for productivity as well, but we're looking at it a bit more from like the customer value lens.
Makes a lot of sense too, just to kind of sort of adapt towards using these new tools. Do you feel like it's actually optimized the growth of your business in ways that you didn't necessarily see like was possible,
For
5
sure,
years ago?
yeah. Especially as we build out more of this. But for example, like something that's cool with the one we have for prospective members, like people will ask questions, right? And they can do that 24/7. It's going to respond. And like, we've kind of trained it like how to answer certain things depending on where someone is. So like, someone will write in and be like, what are the benefits in New Orleans? Well, that's an area where we don't have restaurant partnerships, but it highlights everything else that we do have, which is quite a lot. And then it also kind of pumps hotels, which is like the second most popular part of the program. And, like the responses it gets are like, oh, wow, like so cool, because it's fast, right? Like that's a big thing actually in customer service or customer experience is the speed. And the speed of AI is kind of unrivaled. And it's similar now, like when we're not widely releasing the travel planner just yet. It actually is like secretly sitting on the site just because we were like nominated for a few things in AI, and I wanted something more advanced to be there. But I showed one of our newer hires, and he was like, "Oh my God, that just did in like 10 seconds what my mom fights with a travel agent over for like 2 weeks." Because we already have all these relationships, we can pull in like real time rates, booking capabilities, benefits, whether it's an experience or a hotel or a restaurant. We're able to just bring it all in so that it's nice and easy.
I am enrolled. I'm ready to sign up for this card immediately.
Well, something that I think, I want to bring up too is for our listeners right now is that many of our members of the Morning Bite are investors and professionals in tech. So that could be you're a CEO of a business that's already been around for a while. Maybe it's something brand new. Maybe you're interested in starting a business, or maybe you're an AE that works within the tech space or an account manager. But a lot of folks out there, and I'm sure you both know this, especially from what we've read on the Bite, is that a lot of people are afraid of using AI to like integrate into their current systems and processes.
Totally.
And then also a lot of people are being replaced by it. We're seeing a lot of reorganization happen as well. So it's exciting, but it's also scary. But I think the good news is that it's accessible. I mean, that's the thing I want to focus on, is that it's accessible for everyone to take advantage of. And in your case, Carlo, you took advantage of it, right? You're leveraging it for yourself and your team right away.
Yeah.
I imagine for you guys listening, one of the things is like, all right, I don't have enough time. It seems to always be the issue for so many people. Carlo, how long did it take you to research and set it up, versus like what you expected it would take and then what it actually took?
That's a good question. Look, when we built our own, we were really kind of starting from scratch. You didn't have these widely available tools. So that took some testing to get it right. When you're building more sophisticated things, even if you're doing that on top of these existing tools, that takes a lot of testing as well, because these tools aren't perfect. They're very, very, very good, but they're not perfect. And we're trying to like adjust them to be better and to utilize, some of the unique knowledge that we have. But certain things you can spin up in a matter of like days, actually. So like these like AI agent companies that raise a lot of money, like I don't fully understand why. You can spin that up literally in a few days if you have good engineers. And then I'm sure ChatGPT is just going to do that too.
Yeah, I think the thing too with like the accessibility, like from a business perspective, is like the first part of like where this is going, right? Businesses see the value of like, this can make me money, this can enhance my business, this can improve processes. But now we're going to start seeing it apply to the consumer level. So you hear throughout history, the internet, before the internet was the internet, it was called NARPA. It was used just by the military and then through college campuses. And then eventually the network expanded, and then it was used by businesses. And then the daily consumer started using it full time. You probably remember AOL and then AIM, right? Like that's how it expanded over time. I think the same thing is happening with large language models. It started off with research. I don't know if the military was in on large language models. Maybe we'll learn about it 30 years from now that they were. But as far as we know, it's mostly just these college campuses that were practicing with large language models and private businesses like OpenAI. Right. How it actually came about was Google created transformers, and then that allowed them to start predicting words. And then OpenAI used the database from Amazon reviews to start predicting the next chain of words. And what was really interesting is that over time, when they added more data to the data set, it just started being more accurate. And it really kind of blew people's minds. It was like magic. But as you guys know, or probably have heard of, there's lots of different large language models that actually don't work well.
Yeah.
OpenAI works really well. They have all these metrics, and GPT-4 is the number one large language model up until very recently. Now there's Anthropic, which created Claude 3, which is now the number one, but then GPT-4 just released something new called GPT-4 Turbo. For the listeners out there, if you're getting confused, don't worry about it. The point is that there is a lot of large language models that exist, and we're just starting to see it now play from business to now it's going to start being involved with consumers. So I say this because one of the bites from this week, I'm going to read it. Apple AI outshines GPT-4. This was posted this week on Tuesday. And the 3 bullets for this was Apple AI outperforms GPT-4. It apparently integrates the user screen to help explain different types of context on the screen. And the big rumor right now is that it's going to be released with iOS 18. This was first reported by Tech Explorer, If you guys subscribe to the Byte, you can look at that URL link and see more info. Basically, what happened is that Apple announced their latest system. It's called Real LM. So that's spelled REALM.
Nice.
Apparently, it outperforms GPT in many tasks. But really, why it matters is that apparently Apple may have their own large language model built into their new iOS system. And there's also rumors that they might outsource OpenAI's GPT-4 and Google's Gemini 1.5 to also be used. Think of it this way. When you guys go to Safari on your iPhone and you search for something within the Safari window, the default search engine is Google. Now, imagine if you search for something on your iPhone and the default large language model being used is GPT-4. Or perhaps you want it to be Google Gemini. I think that's what we're about to start seeing, is that there'll be many large language models, just like there are many different search engines, and people will have the ability to choose their own via Apple on iPhone specifically. That goes to an enterprise business working with other enterprise businesses, but how that affects the consumer is we will need to start being aware of which search engine are you using, which AI are you using, right, to research things. That's the evolution of what's happening today from a consumer level. So will it be accessible to everyone? Even more so. But I think as a community, we need to be aware of, can you trust the search engine you're using? Can you trust the AI?
Just wanted to highlight, I'm listening to you read on this and I was like, what an interesting step. So right now, everyone is rushing to get AI into their company, or at least say that they're using it anywhere. Just to throw that in the investor report that comes up at the end of the quarter and be like, and we're now AI powered. Like, to do what? Carlo, you have an excellent use case for AI in your business. And it's clear to me that it's integrated and embedded. Something that has also been so true to Apple, I think, since they debuted, is that they focus on user experience and like the salience of their technology into their user's life. It's always got to be good looking. It's always got to be sleek. It's got to be easy to use. The brand itself should carry some kind of strata that comes with it. You know what I mean? Like, you're an Apple user, and that's remained true.
Like an ease of use, usability.
Yeah, it's remained true for decades. So one of the points here that are highlighted in this article is that their goal here, seamless integration between devices, which is personally why I am probably never going to move off of Apple.
Right.
Because the ability for me to have things on my laptop, cell phone, and iPad has changed the game for me. A sweet, energetic, scatterbrained ADHD queen saves my life, and has many times over. So
so it's very, very interesting, and I'll provide a tiny bit of context of my history with Apple. So Apple was my first personal investment. I emptied my entire savings account in 2005 and put it into Apple. So that did pretty great to be honest. So I really believed in the company back then because of that quality of product. I felt like any product they did it the best, essentially. And this is one of, I'm sure there's other instances, but this is a time where it's like they've realized they're not doing it the best, at least not yet. So this was like a surprising story in some ways, and not surprising in other ways, that like they know they need to move on AI and they're just not quite there yet. And they're not the type of company to release something that's not quite there yet. So, very interesting to see a potential partnership with Gemini or OpenAI, is probably the right way to do it right now. And, it's interesting. There's more and more competition. There's more and more people building models. We play around with multiple all the time. And, they rank I don't know exactly how they rank them, to be honest, by like whatever stats. We haven't seen something be able to be at the level of ChatGPT, at least not yet. A lot of times when stuff that's comparable is released, like they have stuff behind the scenes that's like 10x, and it's just not released yet. So it'll be very interesting to me to see, is anyone going to be able to keep up, and how far ahead are they going to move? And what'll be interesting is, what are the other companies going to try to do to catch up? Like there's a lot of concerns now about privacy, because they want to try to use things that like should be private to try to catch up their models. And I don't think a lot of consumers want that. it's going to be very interesting to see the space develop. I will say I love the idea of AI in devices. I think it could be immensely helpful for search and for a number of things on these devices. It's a little like inefficient. So AI in device, I'm a big fan. So hopefully that is what we get to see here this year.
I totally agree. And it kind of seems like the concerns that we have across the board are the same ones that we have with any type of platform, which is like, what are the decision-making capabilities of each? So for example, the Facebook algorithm, Instagram algorithm, TikTok algorithms, like what are we getting served to people en masse? Same thing with any kind of search platform, and how do we reduce bias? How do we increase accuracy? One thing I was going to say, Carlo, one of our bites from last week that we spoke about that really kind of blew my mind. I was like, what is that even? How? The LLM, people who are funneling information into the LLMs. And gosh, I probably sound like such a peon trying to explain this. Y'all are definitely more experienced and knowledgeable in this area, but they had run out of data on the internet. I was like, excuse me?
Right.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's definitely a real, it's a concern because it's like, are they going to start creating synthetic data? I mean, we talk
Right.
about that in the last episode.
Yeah.
But other companies are starting to do different things. So just bring it back to Apple. This was on Monday's Byte, I believe. Apple signed a licensing agreement with Shutterstock to grab all of their images. So with Shutterstock, so this is what we can make some insight out of this. They're securing legal image sources, right? Which goes against OpenAI, that is, on a little bit, has some heat on them because it's like, where are they scraping their data from? Comedians are pissed. YouTube is now like, did you grab our YouTube videos? Even though everyone scrapes YouTube videos, they did it at a large scale, right? So it's kind of like when you're speeding on a highway. If everyone is going 70, if the cop pulls you over and you're like, why didn't you pull anyone else? You just got caught. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I think this is what's happening with OpenAI. They are the biggest, most obvious shiny thing on the road. So the cops are going for them. And in this case, the court or YouTube. But Apple, I think, slow to the game, but wise enough to play it strategically. They signed a licensing agreement with Shutterstock. I'm sure it cost a lot of money, but now they don't have any fire on them for any of this controversial web scraping. And then, Carlo, to your point, it is enhancing their commitment to privacy, which is their number one value. So it's just really enhancing the customer relationship with them. So if you are an investor or you are a professional in tech, it is good to stick to your word and maintain trust and not lie about it. There are ways to win. It just may take a little bit longer. It's not instant gratification.
Yeah, I mean, trust is number one. If the customer doesn't trust, then that's not going to work out. And I do think that's something that Apple has done a good job of building over time. Because of their focus on quality and their focus on customer. It's much like the Amazon focus on customer is kind of why they won. Like if you look at early videos of Jeff Bezos, he almost sounded like insane the way he was talking about customer experience. But look, he was right. Like sort of like doing whatever it took to maximize things for the customer. Like that's what creates a winning company. And that, you can only win by doing that so long as the customer trusts you. Like trust is really kind of number one. And we hear that with our brand all the time, which is great, which is like customers trust us. So they want us to do more stuff for them because they don't trust other companies, whether it's big companies or small companies. So I agree that Apple has like an immense level of trust and that like they do tend to do things the right way. It's always that like delicate, because someone like them probably didn't really have, they're so big, like they don't even really have the option of like the speed first. Like they would get whacked kind of if they tried.
Totally.
I feel like it's just more noticeable than a startup doing it. But now that the startup is noticeable, right? Like to Keith's point about being the shiny thing on the road, like now they're getting whacked a bit for what they did. And it will be a question of like, how does it shake out in the end? And was that worth it? Like, Uber and Lyft obviously like kind of pushed the boundaries as well in a way that like a lot of people wouldn't have been comfortable with. Because those founders it created like meaningful businesses. So it's always interesting to see how these things evolve. But I think a Shutterstock partnership is a brilliant move if you're thinking about image and video creation. I mean, they just have a huge and immensely valuable library, and being able to do that on that wide of a scale is a great way to tap into creating images and video. And it'll probably be higher quality too, because it is like sourced from mostly professionals, I would imagine.
Speaking of Uber and Lyft, one of our bites that we have up next, Elon. He's back every week. The bite that we have this week is Elon says Tesla will unveil its robo-taxis August 8th, 2024. I wanted to read the full date, so we're holding him accountable to that. This first came to us from Tech Explore. This was one of Wednesday's bites. Did I get that right, Keith? So they are releasing their robo-taxi. Post the announcement, their shares are up 3%. They took a little bit of a ding this quarter. And there are some major concerns about autopilot safety for Elon and the robotaxi. Now, I have friends who live in Silicon Valley, and this is not necessarily new to them. It still blows my mind and makes me a little like, because they've said it's the craziest thing to like have a car pull up and like not have a driver. Let us rip into this. What do we think?
Well, it really makes you question, we're talking about trust, right? And I think that's that's the theme of the world in tech as we continue to age through the 20s and get into the 30s. It's can I trust this company? And I think, the generation of millennials and even Generation X, were first exposed to companies really taking advantage of people pushing the green agenda on the consumer versus the company taking responsibility. And it was like, can we trust companies like Shell, for example, or any oil companies, right? And we've shifted away from that. And now it's about the tech companies. Can we trust these companies building AI models? Are they getting their data from somewhere safe? Can we trust robo-taxis? Can we trust Waymo? Can we trust Tesla, which we know now for sure that it was being advertised as full self-driving, and it's not. It's actually assisted driving. And I think the three of us know very well today that AI isn't meant to be fully autonomous. I mean, Carlo, you even said it. It's meant to be assisted with a human. And I think that's where the future needs to be directed. It's assisted AI technology that helps us continue to grow this symbiotic relationship. And I think with Tesla, the robo-taxis I think are great, but the question is, should it be full self-driving, autonomous driving by a taxi? Can we trust a robot to pick us up and bring us to where we need to go? What if the person can't drive? How does that affect if there's an accident? What if the person doesn't speak English and the system is only in English? There's just so many ways this can go wrong. And I think that investors want to make money back, obviously, and AI is super exciting, but our government isn't up to par yet on regulations to protect the American people. And I think as exciting, I own a Tesla, we have two, and I love it, but it's just, it really brings up the question, is this safe? Can I trust this? Can I trust Elon Musk, who is a little crazy at times?
What I was going to say was I have to remember that there are thousands of other people who are just incredible workers working at Tesla. Just knowing that Elon is at the helm, though, makes my stomach a little, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
With full self-driving, I think it's this really compelling idea that people have had for a while. I feel like we've been talking about next year or in 2 years or in 3 years for several years. I feel like that's been kind of around the corner. So it is interesting to see him put a date on it. I think that's a bold move. I'm not necessarily sure it's a wise move, but it's a bold move for sure. And I think part of that is coming from this perception that they're a little bit maybe behind in some ways on AI and should be ahead. Tesla, I think, was, especially when their stock price ripped, they were kind of viewed as this technological innovator ahead of everybody, just way, way, way out. And look, with the cars and the assisted driving on the cars, they are ahead of everybody for sure. They've also got robots that are beating people up. So it's it's not it's just not perfect yet. And I think I just think it's going to take more time to get there. And then there is a real question of like, do we really want it? And I think like Sam Altman actually had like a kind of good comment on this, because like I guess like with the systems that are running now, right? Because like for those of us that haven't been in a robo taxi or whatever, like maybe it sounds like, whoa, what? Like what? Like it has
It's
been
so
for
jarring.
it has been happening for a while, and like on the whole I think they're already better than human drivers, but the problem is when it's technology and not a person, sort of like the threshold for having a mistake is just much lower. So it really needs to be, it can't just be a little bit better, which is probably where it is now. Maybe it's a little bit better. It almost needs to be like 10x. And that's what Sam was saying. And I think that's roughly right. For people to feel like they can trust.
The chance of a risk happening needs to be so low because the repercussions of it going wrong is so bad.
That's right. But when it's not a human, like, cause we're going to be a little more understanding with each other. But like when it's technology, like it's a little different. We just sort of like expect, there's a level of expectation that's a bit higher. And especially because in this case, it's potentially technology replacing humans. People are just going to want that to be, I think, at a significantly higher level. And I will say with the one experience I've had in a car that was like self-driving around a friend's car or whatever, it worked. But at least for me, it was like a little like janky. Like I don't know. It didn't feel like smooth to me.
I can make you laugh on that. You're not alone in that feeling. Andrew, my partner, I'm not allowed to turn on full self-driving when he's in the car with me.
It's fine if you're like going straight, but I found like the turns, it's kind of like crank, and it's like this isn't really like comfortable. Like I'm sure like it got it right, like it did it, and it would like figure out some things that are tricky. So it's absolutely impressive. It just feels like it's just not all the way there yet. And I actually, honestly, I question that it's theoretically already a little bit better than a human. I'm not so sure about that. That might be based on limited data and tests only in certain areas. Like, let's see it do rush hour in Miami.
Well, it's so relevant because if you guys think about COVID changed the world, in so many ways. So many sad ways, but it also pushed us to be more technologically advanced society. I mean, we lost a lot of people. It's horrible what so many of us had to go through with our families and friends, but it did push us to evolve, I think, as a society in different ways. And one of the things is working remote. And, I think a lot of people aren't really going into the office as much as they used to. I'm a big fan of a hybrid/fully remote schedule. I think requiring people in the office every day to me is it's insane. I think there's a lot of different ways to work with others and help them be productive. I think a hybrid works because you can talk to people. So, but with the shift to remote work and hybrid, people don't want to commute all the time. And I think what we're noticing too is that, this was in one of the bytes, remote work is reshaping the transit in general.
Right.
Carbon emissions have plummeted. Transit revenue is also nosediving. And urban mobility itself is kind of at a crossroads. That was actually the Byte on Wednesday from phys.org. And I have some facts to share with you guys.
Tell us.
So it looks like the shift towards remote work has led to a significant decrease in car travel, cutting nearly 200 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually across the United States.
Moly.
The same shift caused a 27% drop in transit fare revenue, amounting to a loss of $3.7 billion nationwide.
Wow.
So the change in work habits poses a new challenge for city planners and transit agencies. And why this matters is that the reduction in carbon emissions from a fewer car commute aligns with broader sustainability goals. So yes, that's great, but the decline in transit revenue underscores the financial pressures faced by public transit systems in an era of increasing remote work. So we're saving the planet a little bit, but then it's hurting revenue for cities, and it's just creating a new issue that we weren't necessarily prepared for. So it's like, how do we meet carbon neutrality targets at the same time managing remote work policies?
I mean, so this is a unique conversation because we have 3 New Yorkers on the line right now. So the way we're gonna get to all of those other big points, but right away, what this feels like when I hear this is the same feeling I had when airlines were like begging for bailouts early COVID because no one was flying, and people were tweeting like, "Where were you when my baggage was 1 pound overweight? Okay, and you charged me $50." And now you want help from me? Are you kidding me? The MTA. Oh, the MTA. You have been the top of my resentment list. I've lived in LA for like what, 7 years now, and I still have a bitter tinny taste of resentment in my mouth when I think of the MTA. And now there's a 27% drop in transit fare. So where it really affects is like not just city planning, but yeah, like where our city is, where are we getting our municipal money to increase quality of life? Because that's what we're doing with those dollars. Like it's fixing the sidewalks, it's fixing the roads, it's paying our city workers. We are all probably, I see you guys nodding. So yeah, we're largely on board with supporting.
Well, it's like, where's the money going, right? Was it being allocated the right way from the beginning? Was the revenue for ticket shares actually going towards fixing the MTA?
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
they're liars. Liars. Okay.
And really what the government needs is system and processes built on AI, because I think humans are a little too faulty when it comes to calculations. The thing is, GPT-4 is not the best for calculations, but it's coming. I'm pretty sure GPT-5, it won't be named that, is going to change the world. I mean, Carlo, you listen to Sam Altman, so do you, Tanya. Like, he's been kind of like, I feel like he's preparing everyone that like the world's going to change overnight again. And I think what we're going to see is that the government is going to be able to be a little bit more better. I don't even know if that's the right grammar, but I think it'll be improved. It's just more people are going to be out of a job, and it's, I don't know, is universal basic income coming? But
probably
I brought that up a few times now, and it was not, I have really put that out of my head because I'm just like, they'll never do it. But then you keep bringing it up, and I see why you see
because
that.
What are we going to do? I mean, unless they're going to train, it's like we have higher education. Right. Everyone went to college. Everyone went to, you were told to get a master's or at least do your bachelor's. Right. And now we just have this huge amount of workers who have the same education that don't have engineering, don't want to go back to school. And it's, I think we're going to look at like a second tier of higher education where we're going to see people in their 30s and maybe even 40s have to go back to work. I mean, I went to Starbucks this morning, and Starbucks is known for having like college, young 20-year-old students. And there was someone there who was a senior citizen working the teller door. Like I've never seen a fast food restaurant have a teller that is a senior citizen. And of course, people living longer, but it just goes to show that the workforce, the labor force is changing dramatically faster than ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're hitting so many interesting topics here, to be honest.
I know. Gosh, I love the Byte. Carlo, I want to ask you for a founder perspective here. So I spend good amount of time on LinkedIn, and they're the fodder, the algorithm on LinkedIn automatically rewards the fodder about remote work and hybrid options and coming to the office. Still, to me, it's a little nauseating. I really feel like it depends on your industry, depends on your company, depends on your team to make the best choice. But en masse, what do you think? Do you think that we are ever going to see, I think, frankly, I think the ship has sailed. As far as like remote hybrid, 100% in office. And I think like what we're seeing come out in the wash that I think a couple of founders are not really willing to look at in the mirror is like, if your team isn't working well remotely, that's an operational and culture problem and not a technological one. Tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of encouraging everyone to do their best work wherever that is. So like we have an office in New York still. Employees go in there and use it when they want to. I think it's good to have that sort of option. I like the idea of getting teams together sometimes, like we're doing that right now because this Miami Tech Week, we have some people in from out of town. I think that stuff is important, but I think the idea of someone being in an office every day because you want them there is just really stupid, frankly. And I don't think that like the younger generations want to work that way. I don't personally want to work that way. And look, when everyone had to shift to remote sort of suddenly, I hated it for a couple of weeks. I was used to being and I'm introverted. I was used to being around people. I was used to
Mhm.
being in an office. So I hated it for a couple of weeks. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm like way more productive because I'm not worrying about my commute and I'm not worrying about this
Mhm.
other thing. I can just worry about work. And I think we saw that with
Totally.
like business productivity across the board during COVID. Like businesses were more productive, they were more profitable. Like it does work. And I think this idea that certain companies can just like demand people to be in an office when they don't need to be,
Right.
I think it's just sort of silly. They're not going to be able to get the best talent then. And if
Totally
companies
agree.
want to make that decision, ultimately, go for it. That's good for me because we're more so focused on how do you do your best work. We'll try to
Mhm.
enable that. Like that's more the sort of I guess angle with it that we're taking. And on the carbon emissions, I think that was like a positive side effect of everyone
Yeah. Yeah.
working remote. It's like, wait a minute, we can take this down if we like don't make everyone drive around.
So we have a drop in transit fare, but what I'm wondering is also, are we seeing an influx of an influx of cash in other cities farther spread out from these large metropolitan areas? Because I know people evacuated Manhattan
Possibly.
in COVID, but are we going to be seeing it in North Carolina cities? Are we going to be seeing it pushed out into like maybe a return of like an uptick elsewhere? Perhaps it's not just like the money is gone, but it's actually
No,
being recirculated in different areas. When I go in and consult with teams about what they're doing, my perspective universally is almost like, what is the result? What is
of
their
course.
desired result of their work? If you care about watching them do it, that's just about control. It's not about good work.
It's
Then
almost like a sickness or something. It's like like it should always be about the results.
yeah,
And that's how you can tell like a good employee from a bad one. Like if you hear a lot of excuses and the results aren't right, it's
that's
like I
not
don't
gonna change
care.
in office or not. Can I tell
No,
you something funny?
yeah,
You guys are gonna laugh at me. We're gonna do a little potty humor on the morning bite. I was a remote worker long before it was cool. I came
That's
out here to
right.
start I came out here to start the West Coast market for Just Work. So out of I think God, we were just over 100 when I left, and then I think several hundred when I came back. So for me, the switching cost, I would come back and do like reports on the market about every quarter. The switching costs of going from like working in isolation then to being in a huge office again were tremendous for my focus. So that cost me quite a lot of productivity. The
yeah.
thing that I never planned on that ate up my productivity in office versus at home, bathroom breaks.
Yes. Oh my God.
I am,
When you have to
this is
walk so far
so
to go to the bathroom, it literally is a
real. I
thing.
work all day long, a foot and a half from the toilet. Okay.
Yeah,
I also
exactly.
drink I run on coffee and water. I drink so many liquids. And I found when I would go to the office, especially because I was back, I was like an exciting object because I was back from California. So people would be stopping me in the 10-foot walk. And not only did I have to pee so badly, but I was like, I have to start doing bathroom math because I'm losing out on things that need to get done.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
the thing is, it's like it's so important to save time no matter what kind of business you're in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of why I started the Morning Bite. Well, really, it was. It started off as just like a
Yeah.
hobby. I was researching late at night about generative AI when it was like still
Mhm.
GPT-3, and it like,
Mhm.
wasn't accurate at all. And then I was like, wait, I like spend all my time doing this. I can't just tell my family members all day long. Like, maybe there's other people out there who would be more interested in this stuff that could leverage it.
Mhm.
And through studying all this tech, I learned to automate it for myself and find these articles and research them and analyze them. And, I spent a lot of time researching what's happening in the tech world so that, we as members can leverage it to stay ahead. So I am curious, Carlo, you've been a Byte member for almost a month now. Like,
yeah.
tell me what you think. Let our listeners know, how's it going for you. Do you feel a difference? Love to hear more.
What I noticed in particular this week, and I love the format. Like I think
Mhm.
email is getting a little overdone. So getting something in more of like a text format where it's more concise, more to the point, and then you can always like link out to get more information if you want, which is what the Byte does. I just think that's an easier format for people in the morning, and it's actually good for the Byte itself because I feel like it's a more noticeable format as well. Email can get kind of flooded. Some of it like feels like it's the same. This feels different, and it
Yeah.
is much faster. And that's just really important because the world just moves faster and faster and faster and faster. Because I'm in tech, like I see some of it, but certainly not all of it. And certainly this week in particular, because I've been running around, back to that point about remote work, kind of like I usually am sitting in this room doing work. Like people think I'd be running around and like you might see like the Fashion Week stuff on Instagram, but like most of this is like heads down work. Like bathrooms right there, like in particular when like you are adding these other elements that make things less efficient, it's really great to have something that's so efficient as a tool, keeping you up to pace with what's been going on, because the reality with AI is it's moving so fast. So you just gotta kind of keep up. And just to jump back to like the government revenue piece, I think the government needs to change how it makes money a little bit. I think that we should be realizing the shift here, and frankly the government should invest in some of this stuff, not grants, not like here's this incentive or that incentive to get the jobs. No, invest, support these companies, and then the upside and or revenue that's going to create will allow us to support people. I actually think that's going to be very important. I tend to be more on like the doom and gloom side of jobs, and I'm mostly right with things with companies and markets, and I've been consistently wrong about this. So that's the footnote. But these tools are really good. I think there's a very high risk to jobs here. We need to make sure no bad actors get anywhere near that. They are so, in my opinion,
susceptible,
so far out ahead. Like they should be supported, but they also we also need to make sure that like no one gets in there that we don't want. Like it's great that we have the company that's so far out ahead, but like let's not risk a goddamn thing. Like, but whatever they need, great, get it to them, and then just make sure that like anyone that we're concerned about as a potential bad actor is nowhere even close.
With government investing into specific companies, we're going to see some concerns about more ethical violations and like what they're doing behind the scenes to like support their investments. But I totally agree with you that we need to think about like how we are making money. And also, again, we are long overdue we're not really, direct representation in like what our tax dollars are going to and what it's supporting. So I think there's been room for an overhaul there. So we are completely aligned on that.
Well, and that is the other big piece that Keith mentioned is like the government needs to leverage these technologies to be more efficient. Like it's sort of like, it's like a long storied thing that like contracting for the government is kind of like the best gig, more or less, because they're so budget insensitive. They're so like keeping something on pace insensitive, and that's not good. That's not the way that like we want to be thinking about.
Oh, you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked at the inefficiency.
Yeah.
I just remember watching the news break on January 6th, watching it like live. The thing that really, of all of the things of that day that stunned me the most, the one that really got me where I was like, what? Was that several of the workers in the Capitol building, were pulling out what looked like a pirate's chest full of the Electoral College votes. Now, that was the moment that I learned the Electoral College votes are kept in what looks like a treasure chest. And I was like, I thought that was like a concept or like a theory. You mean to tell me there's like this is ridiculous.
That is wild. Yeah.
I know. Please go look it up. So I saw both of your faces go like, what? And I think my Botox is wearing off because I can make that facial expression. So I need to like I was like, and I was talking about it with one of my girlfriends, and she's like, isn't it incredible how archaic certain parts of our government are in ways that we have no idea? And that was like a critical thing that these workers had fought to do that so that we didn't have any kind of muddying of the election further. And I was like, are you shitting me? The more you know.
If you're a listener today, you may or may not be a member of the Morning Byte. We would love to have you as a member. We do a 7-day free trial, and support is built into the app. So if you have any questions during a trial, you just reply to the text. But before we let you go for the weekend, I just wanted to report, today, this is being recorded on Friday, April 12th. And one of the bites from this morning was there's been a layoff surge in tech and government. And there's also been a initiative by companies from IBM to help counteract this. So let me just explain what happened. So on April 4th, it was reported by Routers that there was a layoff spike about 7% in March, which equates to about 90,309 jobs cut, which is a slight increase from last year. Now, despite that number being scary, you may have seen that there was 309,000 jobs added to the US market. These numbers are alarming for multiple reasons. One, there's a discrepancy between reporting jobs added and people who are actually getting let go of jobs. It brings into question, are people going from full-time to part-time, and that's counting as a job added, but yet someone's still getting laid off? Listen, I like the administration. I don't really want to talk bad about any administration here. I do want to keep politics out of it, but the Morning Bite is about bringing light to misinformation. And I don't think all misinformation is malicious. I think it's very easy to make a mistake. And I just want everyone to know that a lot of people are getting laid off. A lot of people can't get a job. The competition is very hard. People are using the applicant tracking system. And then you have human errors as well. We are in the wild, wild west of the internet, just like it was back in the day where people rode horses. I think we are in that space on the internet. But it is not all bad news. There is a workforce shift happening, reported by the Register on April 4th as well. IBM is fronting a job shift. Their goal is to retrain 95 million people in the decade, and they are going to be focusing on prompt engineering roles.
Okay.
I'm curious what you guys think about that as we close up our discussion today. Lots of people are getting laid off. Lots of people are having trouble finding a job. Lots of people are doing part-time jobs. I am one of those people who started a business. Tanya, so did you. Carlo, you own your own business. What do you guys think about this? Prompt engineering roles, people getting laid off, 95 million people are supposed to be retrained in a decade. Is it possible? How do you feel?
Yeah, so I agree that it's not as rosy as it seems, at least in like office style work. I'm a little doom and gloom on this. I just think there's going to be a big shift that happens over time. It won't be overnight, but like there's a lot of key functions in businesses where like it's very difficult to imagine that 50% plus of those positions don't go away. Any sort of data analysis, it's better already now. Any sort of customer service, it's getting there. Any sort of like research, it's there. Like there's just these key functions that like almost like the internet enabled. And now like this next advancement is like taking them back kind of. And like, I think it's great that we'll like re-educate people. I'm not sure it should all be focused on prompt engineering. I don't think we need that many prompt engineers. I actually think we're going to need more like physical work help. People need to learn more of like the trades and skills and crafts. And South Park had a very funny episode about this where like the maintenance guys end up really rich in the future because like everything else is like, basically being taken away by machines. But no one knows how to like fix their toilet or change a light bulb or whatever the case. So I think we need to do a mix of both because I don't think, like people are concerned with like robots taking jobs. I'm not an expert. I don't really think robots are there. I'm also not even sure that's efficient. Like, do we really need a robot to cook? Can't we just like pay a person to cook? Like people are going to need some jobs, so like, do we really need technology to get in there and replace everything? Like that just doesn't feel like there's a big cost benefit there. So I definitely think it needs to change. I think we should be acting now. I'm glad that there's at least some steps being taken. And I'll echo the sentiments about the current market. Like we have some people on our concierge team that work part-time with us. I know other people who were at other companies that got laid off. I mean, like people that would normally be hired in weeks and they're looking for like 6 months plus. And not getting luck. And like, even when we post like an internship, sometimes we'll get these like people that have like worked on something crazy, like self-driving cars or something like that. And they're in like a PhD program. They're applying for like an operations internship. And it's like, no. This is like physically packing materials and sending them to people. This is not some like quant analysis like, I don't care, I just want the job. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's honestly, it's not the right fit. Like, you need to find something that's a little more of the fit for you. So like, I don't think it's as rosy as people are making it out to be. And I think it will get worse. I think it's staggered, thankfully, because companies don't make decisions as fast as technology moves, basically. Like, yeah, we've definitely got to be doing something to like counteract this. And we should be doing that now. We can't wait until it's a big problem, because it will be a big problem if we wait.
Absolutely. So I have my own market predictions about what's kind of going on economically right now. I think Keith actually did the Byte was the one that broke this headline. So I work mostly with mid-sized companies, and I believe the headline about a month ago was that business debt was up across the board for mid-sized companies, despite the fact that sentiments about like optimistic sentiments about the field not changed. And I was like, well, that is a huge discrepancy that's happening, including the fact that like our interest rates are up on that debt. I think we're kind of seeing the results of that right now. Like it's just mid-April. That means Q1 just wrapped. That means a lot of people are having some very hard conversations with their board. We saw the early waves of layoffs happening in end of 2023 through the beginning of Q1. The reports that I've heard just at like director level and C-suite level is a lot of these major companies. So some of these, the other thing about these, the skewed data that's being reported on as jobs that are being re-released is that people are getting laid off only to have the role reopened at a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 drop in salary offering. So that way for the company to reduce cost of operations, that's still an open role that's getting reported on. I also have a theory that like the way that we really track these things is UI, like applying for unemployment across cities. I think that people are still right now temporally probably on packages if they've been offered. We're not going to see the hit to unemployment for a couple of months. And I have a theory that I think in about 6 months to 9 months from now, we're going to see the wave of B2B companies getting hit next. Right now, it's really the first people who are always going to feel it are consumer based companies, because consumers are quite fickle and very sensitive. So as soon as their income contracts, it goes immediately to the B2C companies. And then what comes next naturally. So I have that thought, again, not to be doom and gloom. It's just what I'm observing. Something that really shocked me. Again, I live out in Southern California. Historically, through any economic downturn, the businesses you want to bet on are one, appliance repair. Any kind of home services. You're absolutely correct. The last company that I worked for full time, I was really involved in researching the trades and trends in trade sales, but then discount and grocery always fare well, and then alcohol sales go bigger. The 99-cent store, just like discounted, the 99-cent store, not like in theory, the 99-cent store, the brand has just released that they were closing all of their locations in California, Arizona, and Texas. And that really shook me, I think, a little bit to my core. So I'm keeping an eye on that, because the way that I feel about that, it's one of two things. It's either what do they see coming or what's already transpired that is leading them to take that kind of business action. So I am with you on that. And also the trades have not only been underfunded, but are lacking talent, are lacking tremendous talent. And I can say personally, as a single woman living in Los Angeles, men who know how to fix things, we are lacking talent. We are lacking talent. So please.
So then, with that note, because no, I mean, that's hilarious, first of all. But second of all, I mean, I think just to summarize for our listeners, what Carlo and Tanya has brought to light is that there is a gap in labor where we need people to do specific trades with their hands, more specifically not manufacturing, more of like maintenance, what you were saying, Tanya. And technology is amazing. I think Carlo, to your point, robots are cool. People are getting into it, but I don't think it's there or nearly close to there to being popularly used just as we are using large language models at the moment. I think that there's a lot of issues that we don't even know about that will come into play when trying to make it into mass production. Energy sources, energy efficiency, how long can it be used? Where does it get stored? Do people have room in their apartments for it? If not, is this for homeowners only? Does it get charged like a car? Is it a regular car battery chartered? For my Tesla, I have to buy something specific for the house. There are so many things that the infrastructure isn't there yet. I see this being we'll have this conversation again to the extent of like the pressure of ChatGPT in maybe 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there yet. I mean, electric cars aren't even popular everywhere yet. I don't see robots becoming into like a pure existence until electric cars are everywhere. So we got some time on that. But if you are listening to this, you probably are wondering, well, what the fuck am I going to do with my life next? It's just like there's a lot of things to kind of figure out. And I think, I'd like to go around as we end this. If you could give advice to our listeners, whether you're an investor, entrepreneur, or a professional in tech, or a student, what should they do? Bias, you should sign up for the Morning Byte to stay ahead. But if you don't have $6.99 to spare a month, that's fine. You can listen to this podcast every week. It premieres on Fridays, time TBD. But we also have a LinkedIn page and Instagram page. But if you want some advice for right now, I think what I would recommend is really just you have to start staying ahead. You have to stay informed, whether it's Byte or somewhere else. You need to stay informed. It is kind of like investing. If you do a little bit every day or a little bit every week, it will pay off. And the thing is, this is like new stage stuff. Learning about this stuff now, if you try to learn it in 10 years, it might be like trying to design a website from scratch. It will be very overwhelming. But right now, it's manageable to understand. It really isn't that difficult. So my advice for everyone universally would be start learning, start researching a little bit every day. This is where the Morning Byte really does come into play. Email is really clunky. It's very annoying. Social media can be very distracting. So I'd recommend checking out the Byte. But if you don't want to do that, start paying attention a little bit every week.
I would definitely echo that recommendation, and now's the time to start to explore this stuff if you're interested. Even though it's advanced very, very fast, it is still early. So there's a lot of opportunity in being early. So it's good to get familiar and take advantage of that. I also think it's a very good time, frankly, to save and invest. I think spending habits post-COVID got a little silly. There's a lot of stuff people were buying that they don't need, or spending money on that they don't need to do even. I mean, I like experiences over things for sure, but like just be smart. And, in particular with investments, I think to an extent you have to hedge some of this, frankly, by having holdings in some of these tech companies that are pushing this forward. That's one of the ways that you hedge and can put yourself in a better position if it ever does get to some sort of doom and gloom kind of point. And hopefully it doesn't, but it might. So that's, my other recommendation. And then, I think a lot of people are doing this now, but like, as you think about companies you might work for or start, it's sort of like, are they, either like basically immune to this, like a home maintenance business, at least for now, that kind of thing, or are they like leaning in? Is kind of important. Like we're starting to see people from some pretty prominent companies in our space that are kind of reaching out to us because they've noticed that like we're leaning in, and they are actually concerned about their current companies not leaning in, sort of being like technology second instead of technology first. So I think that's something to consider as well. Just because a company is doing really well today doesn't mean it's doing well forever. And it also doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to keep everybody there. I think that's something people learned in the last couple of years as well. When you see, a company that's very profitable like Meta or Google laying off lots of people, like that's not because they financially need to. It's pressure from markets to become more profitable and because they overhired. It was both, actually. There's just new things to, I think, take into account now, and you always want to be prepared. And the number one way to be prepared, I honestly do think, is to learn, actually. So right back to Keith's point about learning, that's the number one way to prepare. But I would think about all of these things.
So just to summarize, we have learning, saving. Tanya, what's the third thing you're giving us?
So I wanted to echo your sentiments there, Carla. That was excellent. This has been a great conversation, great episode. So yeah, first things first, from what I'm watching in the market right now, I want to agree with you. I think that having cash on hand is critical at this moment, absolutely critical. So even if you are dealing with any kind of consumer debt, frankly, pay your minimums, keep your head down, do good work. I think having cash on hand is absolutely critical right now. I think that pay attention to where your money is invested, and maybe shift it around in a way that seems a little bit more smart, or you're looking towards long-term strategy here, even moving some of it maybe out of the market, but then into your, again, cash on hand accounts. Then the next piece of advice I have here is actually I think a little different. It's actually about emotional regulation. And I think that this goes both for executives and for anyone who is not at like a C-suite level here, but do not panic. Do not panic. I have never seen any situation be improved by panic. Urgency? Yes. Critical action? Yes. But critical thinking cannot coexist with panic in one mind. Absolutely not. This is such unusual advice to give as a business strategist, but there is almost an animal sense I think that we really need to reconnect with here. Stop denying our common sense. So what I love about working with Keith is that most of the fodder in Keith's business is reviewing the headlines and watching the playing field and seeing what's happening. So a critical part of that for us in our conversations is responding and putting the pieces together and stitching together the parts of the economy in different areas that maybe other people are not looking at all together. So yeah, I think really do not deny your common sense, do not panic. That goes hand in hand with the education. The farther ahead you stay of these things, the best you can do is just get a little bit of early warning and then make choices and then make decisions.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, Carlo. I think that wraps it up for today. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you in a week. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye.
Bye.